Welcome to Healing and Made Free with Janet Boynes Ministries. Thank you for listening. Janet will be talking about her struggle with addiction, alcohol, drugs, eating disorders, unwanted same-sex attraction, and living a homosexual life. Janet has survived all those things by the grace of God. Janet's not a doctor, she's not a therapist, she's not a psychotherapist, she's not a licensed counselor. Janet is an ordained pastor and wants to show you God's promises, how God has set her free, and how you can be set free. What He has done for her, He will do it for you. If healing and freedom are what you want, you have come to the right place at the right time. Let's get started. Here is Janet Boynes.
I am here with my good friend, Ken Williams. Ken, welcome to Healing and Made Free.
Hey, it's awesome to be with you, Janet. Appreciate it.
Well, it's good to see you again. It's been a minute. I know you're preparing to leave for Washington, D.C. with a big crowd. I remember doing that with you before, and it was so much fun.
So much fun. Yeah. Sorry you can't be with us, but we'll survive, I guess.
Yeah. I would love to be with you guys and do more with you. It's just, we're all on our own journeys. We're all so busy with doing different things.
Yep.
But I believe we're going to meet up someday, with the Lord, and we're going to have to spend a lot of time in eternity.
There you go.
I want to start off with a question with you. I want to hear a little bit about your story, just a small portion to get us started, because I know you were involved in homosexuality for a period of time. And I don't have a lot of men that have come out of homosexuality, which I think it's really important today, because as many of the LGBT community is trying to come out of the closet, they're trying to put us in the closet.
Yeah, lock us back in the closet. Yeah.
Trying to lock us up. But can you share a little bit of your story with my audience?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my name is Ken Williams. I've been a pastor for 16 years, an associate pastor at a big church in Northern California, and have loved that. And the reason I got into that, I was doing great in the business world and had money and all of that, and left it just because I started to realize, wow, the things that God had done in me, the ways that He had set me free, what really satisfied me was paying that forward and offering that to other people that were in pain like I was. And so that's why I've been doing this for 16 years. But my story started off, I was raised in the South and a very conservative Christian upbringing, got radically saved at 8 years old. I mean, I was repentant for my sins. I remember as an 8-year-old, and undone by what Jesus had done, that He'd paid for my sins. I was undone by that. And yet there wasn't anybody around me that really understood the fullness that's available by walking with the Lord, day by day. I didn't understand that Jesus was present to heal. I didn't understand that He was a comforter. I didn't understand that He would give counsel on a moment by moment basis. And so when I discovered, when I was in my early teens, that I wasn't like the other boys, that I was sexually attracted to the other males, not the females, then I didn't turn to God for help because I didn't know He cared. I had fire insurance. I had my ticket to heaven because my sins were paid for, but I had no idea that He cared about how I felt today, or that He would offer solutions or guide me or bring me inner healing, any of that. And so I didn't go on that journey at that time. I just got depressed and scared. And I believed that the Bible was very clear about homosexuality is a sin. And so it didn't even occur to me that I could pursue a homosexual lifestyle, because my relationship with Jesus, even in the way I knew it back then, was the most important thing to me. But, the struggle was real. I mean, I was humiliated. I was mocked a ton. I didn't fit with the other boys. I was the skinny, scrawny, short boy in every class. And so, when boys are coming of age and all that and growing up, they're competitive with each other. They're not, wanting to coddle the weaker of the species. And that was me. And so I pushed men away. I wasn't trying to have friends that were males. I was trying to not get hurt by males. And I judged them as less than and shoved them away. And so then my friends were the girls, and they were safer. They could speak deeply emotionally, even at that age. And And so that's where I found safety. But then I really believe, Janet, that I was pushing myself away because actually God did create me male,
Right.
And I was pushing my maleness away. I was pushing all maleness away, and I was pushing part of myself away. And so I think, I was so familiar with the girls and so against the males that what seemed exotic to me as an early teen was the males. That's what seemed different and mysterious. And, the comparison of, wow, look at, he's starting to have facial hair and he has big muscles and all that. And I didn't relate to any of that. And so, isn't that interesting?
It's really interesting.
Yeah. And it's like, I think because, we are wired, I mean, our whole nother talk, right? Our chromosomes indicate that we are either fully male or we're fully female. And if that's the case, I'm hardwired for masculinity. And I think what happened was since I had pushed it away, I was looking for myself in him. I know there's different expressions of homosexuality, but I was looking for a better me, really, in him, and looking for masculinity in a way that seemed to, like something I could receive. And so I was trying to get it externally because I couldn't get it, in myself. And
but don't you think that when you talk about that you didn't have a great, or you're pushing men away, it sounds like you're looking for a community that would accept you and love you. And it sounds like you found it with these women or these girls you were hanging out with, which you didn't find with these men. But let's take a step back. How do you think your parents or your father played a big role? Because a lot of times we don't want to throw our parents under the bus just because they're alive and well, But in order for me to be transparent and honest with, my listeners that are hoping for their young son or their young daughter, but mainly their son to walk away from this life, can you talk about the relationship with your dad? Or was it you had dealing with pornography? Or was it that you were raped? Or was it that you were just being teased by so many boys and you didn't fit in and you found a community that would accept you? Which one was it?
It was all those. It was all those, which is pretty common, I find. Yeah.
Exactly.
The gravitate, I was definitely looking for, where can I be safe? Where do people value me? And I, like you said, so I found that community more in the girls, right? And I wasn't finding it with the boys. And I think too, Janet, a big thing beyond the porn and the sex play that the porn catalyzed, that was obviously a big part of it. But so when I was 8 or 9 years old, I'm playing with some, I did have a few boys in the neighborhood that occasionally I would have to end up playing with. And we were playing in a field and a kid opens a boot box and there's hardcore gay porn in there. And so the things that I saw on there scarred me further. Like I didn't understand. I saw violence. I saw disrespect. I didn't just see two men giving love to each other. I saw things that I would never describe, obviously, to your audience. But most people have no clue that happens in that world, the way that men were treating each other. And so I lost further respect for men, seeing why would a man do that to another person? But then that catalyzed those boys to do this sexual interactions with each other that I got pulled into and felt I didn't want it, but it's like I got pulled into it. Didn't really realize what was happening until it was happening. And so that further colored my understanding of masculinity and made me disdain it. I thought it was wrong. I thought, being a Christian, I thought, well, God surely would not, God isn't like this. God wouldn't want people to manifest themselves as I saw men manifesting themselves. So that was a big part of it, was just rejecting. I rejected my masculinity. I judged it as less than. I feel like I stood in God's seat and said, no, this is not acceptable. And I brought judgment on myself when I did that, not knowing, but that's how it works, I think.
I'm talking with Ken Williams that has a new book that came out last year, The Journey Out. Ken, I really want to touch base on the relationship that you had with your father. I want to go in two two directions. One, the relationship that you had with your father. And, you know, when you were living that life or thinking about going out into that lifestyle, there's always a root cause. And we don't always want to blame the parents, but a part of our childhood has a lot to do with why we do certain things, whether we become an alcoholic or a drug dealer or a rapist or a thief or a liar, whatever it is. It does extend somewhere in that root. What was your relationship like with your dad?
You know, it's so interesting for me to reflect back on, because all I can remember is how much he was leaning into me. I mean, he was trying to have these inroads into me. He literally would rather have been with me and my sister than anywhere else. Like he was an at-home, you know, he traveled a lot for work. And so that, I think that was one of the issues, is that he was gone quite a bit. And then I really believe, this is what I was going to say earlier, you know, I don't think it's what happens to us that changes us. I think it's what the enemy says to us when something happens to us, right? That really causes me to change my beliefs about myself, about God, about others, and then my beliefs then chart my course. And I think that's what happened. I think I was shutting my dad out. I think that because of the ways that I was judging other males, I think that was part of the reason that I kind of just put up a wall against masculinity. And he was a man. And so I pushed him away, and he was, you know, he was an outdoors guy. I was allergic to everything. I was serious. I'm joking, but it's true. I was so allergic to stuff in the environment that I didn't want to be outdoors, you know? And so our worlds just kind of gravitated apart, and there weren't any books on all this back then, hardly. And so I know he was trying so hard to bond with me, but I was difficult to bond with. And so it was on both ends.
I hear that, Ken, a lot from dads that I talk with around the country, that, you know, whether it's too late or not, or the mindset with the child or the son has already geared towards homosexuality and they don't want anything to do with that. But I hear fathers say that a lot, that I'm really trying to bond with my child. I'm really trying to have a relationship. And I said, and that's great. However, you know, if you take a couple steps back, you know, their minds and their hearts might be already gearing towards, you know what, you had your chance and I'm out of here. You know what I mean? And I'm going to go get from another man what you weren't able to give me earlier in life. And that's hard on a parent. You know, talking about a child, we're hearing a lot from, you know, Disney and what they're trying to portray on our children, and video after video after video, which I believe that the enemy is after families. And if they could disconnect the family and come after our children will change society. And with that being said, you know, I think, you know, Matt Walsh came out with, you know, what is a woman, you know, which that question couldn't be answered. But let's stay here with the child, because as far as I'm concerned, you're still a millennial. Are you? Are you past millennial?
I just turned 50, so I'm not quite. I'm Generation X, but yeah.
Well, you look good, and I'm glad you said that, because you still are in that age group where you're still working with a lot of millennials and Gen Zs, probably you know, more so than I am. And I want to talk about, you know, the suicide rate right now, which is a very high percentage. I was reading in Forbes, it came out May 2001, and, you know, Dr. Amy Green said it's a terrible time for youth transgenders. And they did a survey based on 35,000 youth from the ages of 13 to 24 across the United States, those who say I'm a gay or lesbian, bisexual, transgender. And they did a survey from October to December 2020, and they said it was an alarming 42% of the LGBT community seriously thought about committing suicide. You know, Ken, I always ask the question, you know, they come against us, want to put us in the closet, call us bigots, and they say they're happy, but they want to commit suicide. What would you say about that? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's tragic. And I think it's one of the reasons why you and I do the work that we do is because we know the pain. We understand that. I mean, I was suicidal at 17 years old. over the inner turmoil. And you could have lined up 1,000 people to stand there and to tell me, Ken, you're awesome the way you are. It's okay if you're gay. And it wouldn't have, I'm telling you, it wouldn't have done anything, because I had an internal conviction of God's call for my life and so the pain is real. And it's so, I think because for one reason, the American Psychological Association abandoned LGBT people 40 and 50 years ago under activist pressure. And it's just increased every 10 years since. And they've stopped looking for help, really. Under pressure, they stopped even trying to help people find freedom from LGBT feelings. And so what we have now is we have only one pathway deeper into LGBT for people, when in fact, you and I know a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of the time, more than half of the time, there was sexual or physical or emotional abuse underneath those. I mean, I know people, Janet, that are 40 years old and never struggled with same-sex attraction until they got raped by a man. And now they want, now they have these same-sex attractions. So the born this way thing not only has been discredited by science, but even just all of the stories that I know, people, things happen to us, and it affects what we believe and how we feel. And so we've got to have solutions for these people's deepest issues. And a lot of times the deepest issue is not, I think I'm gay. It's the stuff underneath that needs healing and counsel and comfort, not just let's cut off a body part, or let's try to convince everybody else out there in the world to pretend about who you are so that you'll be okay. That doesn't fix it. I'm preaching to the choir. But
nope,
you know what I mean?
Go ahead. You're speaking to my audience, and this is what they need to hear from somebody besides myself.
It's so true. I mean, we owe people a real solution.
I like what you're saying about that, but you said something that I don't want to dismiss. You said that even you wanted to commit suicide, or you thought about it. I know for me, which might be a shock to my the listeners, is that when I lost my mom in 2020, February, that I went through the pandemic by myself, and people don't realize that I wanted to commit suicide. And I'm finally in a place where I'm getting EMDR, where I'm finally getting the help that I need because I was drowning. And it's real. And, of course, they would love to see me go on meds because they feel like I need them. They wanted me to get my gun out of my house because I have a license to carry. I was really deep, whereas I thought nobody cares about me. Nobody calls me. I don't want to be here no more. I'm not married. People still think I'm a lesbian. I mean, I was really losing it. And then the loss of my mother was even deeper because I didn't know how to fill that void, that emptiness. I talk with her on a regular basis. So, suicide is real, especially when you think about the CFO, I believe it was, from Bed Bath & Beyond last Friday, just jumped to his death, and Miss America. And we hear about these celebrities that are committing suicide, but there's more than that. But Ken, how did you get through it? In your mind, I know I'm still getting counseling, but how did you get through it?
Yeah. Oh, Janet. Oh, that just wrecks me. Thank God. God saw you through that, and you didn't make that choice, because that would have been such a loss for all of us. Though I tell you what, before I answer that question, I believe that homosexuality is an intimacy breakdown. And isn't it interesting? So like you were saying, what was going on inside these people, and what about the suicidality? Well, check it out. Like I know that you and your mom were really close. I knew that before you just shared that. And for that void to happen to you, right, you had a giant intimacy withdrawal that has to be replaced. And so that's so true for the LGBT community as well. Like, they are looking for their tribe. They're looking for affirmation, for nurture, for belonging, all those things that your mom in heaven now, bless God, was part of fulfilling for you. And this is what I think we've got to talk about, is how do we meet the needs? You and I are pro-LGBT people. We care about the people. It's just that we know enough from personal experience to know we got to meet their deep emotional intimacy needs instead of doing something on the surface.
Right.
And because I was, I could not make sense of my world, and I didn't feel like anybody knew me. Your mom knew you. But when you're hiding and pretending and you've never been able to really, that's why it's cathartic for people to, quote, come out, is because finally they are letting people see what has been inside that they've been protecting, right, and guarding. And it feels good to finally be known for where you are right now. But the Christian life invites us to know each other that deeply, but also to help shape each other into the fullness of what God created us to be. And so, but I didn't trust, certainly in the 80s, I didn't trust the world out there. I didn't trust Christians. I didn't trust anybody with my most private information about my same-sex attractions and interactions I'd had with females. And so I just was going to fold everything because I could not see a way out, and I didn't think God cared. I didn't think he cared. But then,
or did you even think that your parents cared enough? Because you couldn't go to them, could you?
Well, the reality was I could go to them, but because I had never once heard anyone be kind in the face of a manifestation of homosexuality, I had nothing in my life telling me that my parents would be gracious or that any person would be gracious. I had only heard, these are the worst people, they should go to hell, awful things. And so even though I knew my parents loved me, I didn't know what they would say in this situation. We'd never talked about it. So I was scared. So eventually I did. I wrote 9 pages of anger, pain, profanity, all that, all my hidden stuff onto 9 pages, and handed it to my youth pastor the next day. And he was like, okay, and I was the poster child for the youth group. I was the one leading the Bible studies and having this, facade of me and God are great, by the way. And so he just lost his star player on the youth group leadership. And but he said, well, we're going to tell your parents. And I was like, no. He said, oh yeah. And so told my parents cried with me for 2 hours that night. And they were so devastated that I've been in pain and didn't feel safe to tell them. So I started seeing a Christian counselor who I saw weekly for 5 years. And I was never suicidal after that. Once I had a safe place that I could let everything out and see that I was still valued, and that he believed that God valued me even in my brokenness, then I was never suicidal, praise God, after that. But it also didn't make the same-sex attraction go away. It didn't shift everything for me.
Right.
It helped, but it didn't shift all that. That was an encounter with God that catalyzed a discipleship walk with him, is how those things started to come online.
Well, everything is a process. Nothing happens overnight. And if anybody tells me that it does, then I want a different God that they have, because for me, that was a process. And that's what people, they want something that is like a microwave. You can just stick it in there and it happens in, a minute or two, and things don't work like that. But now you're on the other side, and you decided that you want to work with those that are struggling in the same area that you struggled in. And I think if we come out of something, that we should get involved with people that are dealing with the same things that we're dealing with, because now we're on the other side, and we can work with parents and pastors and ministry leaders and, the political arena, if they're open to work with us, which I really don't see, whether you're Democrat or Republican, they're just still not working with us enough to help us, help those that are struggling in this area. Like on the other side of the gay community, they're getting help from the political arena and from, Hollywood and all those people. And they're making millions and millions of dollars, just to get rid of us. And I think that's sad, but we'll all answer to God someday. But you're on the other side. And I like to be transparent and honest, because, I'm just tired of, not being authentic. I think people need to hear the truth from us, because the Bible says, the truth will set you free, but it goes back one and say, if you read my word, then the truth will set you free. But you and I have been free for a period of time. You dedicate your heart. You started a ministry. Let's talk about your ministry. You have a co-partner, Elizabeth Woning, that works alongside of you. I know she'll be with you in DC, and you guys have created a wonderful, wonderful ministry. Let's talk about that. Will you share a little bit about your ministry to the audience?
I will. Yeah. Thank you, Janet. We started just comparing notes. We met each other about 7 years ago. There was another friend of ours. We'd get together for coffee once a week, talk for a couple hours, and compare notes on what have we learned about a walk with God and how that led us out of an LGBT life. And started to realize, wow, I think we know some things that people out there probably don't know about this topic. Right. And we started wanting to help our church with it and the people that were around. And so we started intentionally doing some teachings and trainings. And then along about 2018, which you were part of this as well, Janet, but fighting for this as well. But California tried to pass a bill that would have basically made ministry, counseling, conferences, books that offered any hope of leaving LGBT behind would have made them illegal and would have considered it consumer fraud. Because after all, there aren't people like Ken and Janet in the world, except for that we are here. So that's not possible. So we have to ban it and consider it consumer fraud. And so next thing you know, I'm testifying in legislative hearings. I'm being interviewed by Fox News and all of this. And we put together a book of testimonies to say, hey, we're not the only ones with this story. Ken's not the only one in California with this testimony. There's a whole bunch of others. And so we put this book together, went to all the different senators' offices and signed copies of the book and handed it to the senators and said, we exist, please don't ban us, And miraculous, and we rallied on the Capitol steps, 30 of us, and it was picked up in the news and then went viral on social media, all these 5-minute testimonies on the Capitol steps in Sacramento. And so then this thing called Changed Movement just started organically. And now we have thousands of people in a closed private Facebook group tracking along together, encouraging each other and just sharing testimonies. Because after all, as you know, Janet, we know a ton of people that have stories like ours all around the world. And so that happened. So what we're doing is we are basically protecting the pathway of moving from an LGBT identification into identity in Christ. That's what my ministry does with Elizabeth. It's like we are protecting that pathway, that whether it's in politics, that the laws would stay away so that people can make their own choices in America for what they want for their lives. They can have their religious convictions honored. They can have their free speech honored, all of that. We're protecting those pathways. And then we also are creating resources, teachings and trainings and all that to equip churches, but also to minister to individuals like my book and my e-course and stuff. That's what we're about.
I'm talking with Ken Williams, who had a book that came out last year, The Journey Out. Ken, you have a fantastic ministry that is helping many men and women. But I want to talk about those that have come out of the closet, who are being set free, or who has been set free and are still struggling. A lot of times parents get excited when their child comes out of homosexuality and they get involved in a heterosexual relationship. Heterosexuality is not one of the fruits of the Spirit. We want people to come out of that life so they can walk in holiness and have a relationship with Jesus Christ. That is my main concern with anybody coming out of the life of homosexuality, is that they are getting deeply rooted into discipleship, but also in the Word of God, and have a relationship with Jesus, not necessarily a relationship with Janet. And so how important is it for those that have come out of that life of homosexuality to get discipleship and to get to a place where, they have a mentor and somebody that they are able to go to and talk with and be open and transparent with? How important is that?
Well, it's the game changer. So all of the people that I know that have radical amounts of freedom from an LGBT life have been discipled and have mentor, spiritual moms, dads. They have that in their life, or they didn't get there. For all of the people that I know.
And it's important because discipleship is something we don't talk about anymore. If it wasn't for the family that I live with and the pastor from the Assemblies of God that, worked with me for over a year, and the families that I live with and the church women that helped me, I don't think I would be where I'm at today. How important is it for the church to get involved with those that are struggling and to talk about it from their pulpits?
It's so vital. Think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is talking about sex today, yelling about it, putting up billboards and advertisements and scantily clad this and worse. I mean, it's everywhere. Everyone's talking about it. Mm-hmm. And if the church doesn't, then we look like we aren't an authority on those issues, when actually God is the authority on sexuality. And if the church isn't talking about it, then I remember, Janet, thinking that I remember forming a belief as a child, like maybe 8 or 9 years old, that sex must be bad or wrong, because if it wasn't, I would have heard about it at church. Mm-hmm. Which was another one of the lies the enemy used to deceive me. Mm-hmm. And so we've got to be talking about it. And we need strong, kind men, and we need strong, kind, feminine women that will graciously bring these ones that are confused about their identity or just feel lost into their fold, into their family. Like that's the most amazing stories are like what happened to you, Janet, that I hear. They kind of got folded into a healthy family, and they experienced a kingdom life on display all the time, like every time they're around them. And that is what needs to be happening, because there's so much absence of a solid identity today. Family, I believe, is the answer for that. We have to fold these ones into our family.
Yeah, I'm talking with Ken Williams that had a new book that came out, The Journey Out, which I'm hoping that everybody will go out and buy, because I still think it's important. Ken, if someone that is listening want to have you come speak at their church, and by all means, look, you guys support this ministry. They do have an awesome ministry. Ken has invited me to do a few things which I haven't been able to do. I did support his book and get on a show with him to support his book. And I was telling people, you got to support this guy and in the change movement, because there are so many people around the world that they're reaching a different, people than me, millennials, Gen Zs, parents, pastors. We're all reaching different people, but there's enough room for all of us. If someone wants to have you come speak, and if they can give to your ministry, how would they go about doing that?
They should be able to do that on changedmovement.com. And we also have an Instagram as well. And we've got the closed Facebook group. If anybody's like, oh, I need to be a part of that community. If that's your own journey that you're on, or if you are a loved one of someone like that, or maybe a pastor or counselor, just mention that you heard me on when you're applying on there, that you saw me on Janet's podcast, and we'll have a clue of where you're coming from. But yeah, changedmovement.com. We also have a new online course with a 300-page guidebook called Finding You, which you could get at findingyoucourse.com. But yeah, that's the amazing thing today, Janet, isn't it? Is that things are even crazier today as far as in culture with LGBT than when you and I were struggling through stuff. But we also didn't have the resources that are available today. And I feel like that's God's redemption, is that there are people like you and me doing podcasts and that are saying, hey, this doesn't have to be the final end of your story. Jesus has a way forward for you. So, and obviously your resources are amazing. So I'm so honored to be on here with you today, Janet.
Well, Ken, it's a blessing to have Ken Williams, who has a book, The Journey Out. Ken, thank you so much for being on my show, Healing and Made Free with Janet Boynes. We all know that change happens from the inside out, and only through the power of Jesus Christ. If you would like to have Ken come speak at your church or to your youth group, please reach out to him. If you can't reach him, please reach out to Janet Boynes Ministries, and we will most definitely get you in touch with him. God bless you, and have a great day.
Thank you for listening to Healing and Made Free with Janet Boynes. Acts 10:34 says, God is no respecter of persons. God doesn't play favorites. which means what he has done for Janet, what he has done for guests on this show, he will do for you too. If you are struggling with anything, do not hesitate to reach out to Janet Boynes Ministries. They will do their best to help you any way they can. Go to the website, janetboynesministries.com. Janet loves you, and most importantly, God loves you. Have a blessed day.